might come on the podcast later in the week.
I'll consider it, yeah.
Right,
definitely.
So when my son always says to me, when I say, I'll think about it, he goes, yes, that means yes. And I actually overheard him on the phone to his friend once saying, I asked him for a sleepover and he said, I'll think about it. So that means yes. So you had one of those, I'll think about it from
I did.
Gerry
And funny enough, in my home, it's exactly the same.
Yeah.
They do. They sort of dance the champions dance when I say I think about it. And then I have to go, no, I said I think about it. Yeah. But obviously I think about it means I'm rolling over.
Yeah.
So yeah, Gerry Hutch came out of Dublin Airport this morning. He flew in from Lanzarote.
Yeah.
And he got in to Dublin around shortly after 11 a.m, came out. So there was a media mob there, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
We weren't alone. Obviously, we all had got a tip off that he was due in. And one of the questions I asked him, well, at the end, he wasn't sort of in for kind of stopping and getting deep into his election policies or why he was going for election. You know, it is busy, the airport. It's probably not exactly the best place. So I said to him, you would never come on the podcast in a more sort of private surroundings to talk to us about it. And he said, I'll think about it.
So we'll book it in.
See if Gerry Hutch is like you and I, we'll be doing well. But sure, look, we'll see. I mean, he's home to put his name on the ballot paper.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a deadline, is there, in the next few days that you have to put your nominations in, and then that the nominations close. So he's back with a window of a couple of days.
He told us at the airport this morning that he's going to do it today.
Yeah.
So he's going for it.
And he said, like, he was again asked, I think, by somebody if he was running, and again it was without a doubt 100%.
Oh, 100%, yeah. So he is doing it. So, I mean, he is going to have to talk about, I imagine, at some point, his, you know, what his election manifesto is, what he is running on, what sort of areas what he believes in, and what difference he thinks he can make as a politician. So,
because
anyway,
again,
it is a kind of an odd situation that maybe Crime World is a platform for him to talk on, but we've done that much talking about him here for the last couple of years that...
Yeah, I mean, it actually, when I saw him, because he looks... tanned and healthy, it has to be said.
For a guy who's just out of prison.
Because he is just out, is it a week now at this stage? He was obviously arrested. People who listen will know, but he was arrested in connection with an investigation in Spain into money laundering, and he's currently out on bail. He hasn't been charged with any offence because of the difference in the legal system, but he certainly spent a good few days in a good couple of weeks in a Spanish prison, and it really looked like that political ambition was at an end. Was he asked about anything about the Spanish?
Well, I asked him about it.
Yeah.
He basically came out through arrivals quite casual looking in a yellow shirt, and you know, as you say, he did look tanned and healthy, looked well.
Yeah.
I asked him, first of all, was he home? To put his, to put his name down. Of course, we had a statement from him over the weekend. Anyway, the Sunday World ran the story, and it was on SundayWorld.com that he'd confirmed that he was. But I suppose to get that on camera, makes it all the more believable for people nowadays. So yes, he said he was home 100% for that reason. And then I asked him, you know, was he concerned about this Spanish money laundering investigation? And he said absolutely not. He was 100% innocent.
Yeah.
So, you know, as you're kind of walking through the airport, he's essentially been doorstepped by myself and the others that were there.
I mean, I'm just trying to think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the last time somebody associated with criminality, let's put it that way, was doorstepped at an airport was actually Daniel Kinahan and his brother when they returned for the funeral of David Byrne. I don't know if you remember that. I
do. Yeah.
There was many people. I mean, that's 2016, obviously.
Far more sinister encounters, though. I mean, that wasn't friendly at all.
No, it wasn't. I mean, that's the contrast, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, is this to do with criminality or is this to do with politics?
Well, I mean, it's certainly to do, exactly. I mean,
you know, this is the big question, I suppose. Yeah. But it is, you know, the monk and you know, he doesn't deny that he has the moniker of the monk and that he is known as a veteran criminal. He obviously has no convictions unless you go back to the 1980s. And he will obviously, no doubt, when he's discussing his run for the Dáil, present that as a reason. Why shouldn't he? He obviously was found not guilty of the murder of David Byrne after a trial in the Special Criminal Court, which we attended last year. But he still doesn't deny that he's linked to criminality. I mean, he's not going to turn around and say to you, he's
I've never
he's a sweet and innocent.
No, he's not going to turn around and say I'm no angel.
Yeah,
I suppose that the political platform that he's running on, he hasn't clarified it, but you can only presume it's to do with the area that he's from, the North Inner City, and the social problems that are there. I presume that's going to be something that he's going to be focusing on.
Well, 100%. And in a way, like, he has, you know, in the past, I think the Corinthians Boxing Club is a good example, really, because it was years ago. And it wasn't, from my knowledge, as a publicity stunt. Their club burnt down, right? It was the local boxing club in the North Inner City, and they had no premises. And he had a premises, and he has leased it to them for €1 a year.
Yeah.
Sort of, which is a nominal thing, obviously. It allows them a premises, and it's there where the likes of Katie Harrington trained and where kids come in. So there is some, definitely, there's a community thing with him, a spirit there. And obviously, as we know and we've spoken about before, he is popular in the area. He's a bit of a problem solver. Yeah. Maybe both within the underworld and the overworld, or whatever you'd call it. But he certainly would like to be seen as that, and is recognised at that in many ways. Others have a different attitude to him, including the Garda Síochána, who stood up in the Special Criminal Court and described him as the head of the Hutch organised crime group, certainly the patriarch of it. Yeah. If not maybe the active head of the grouping, which was described as fluid. You know, sometimes it works as a group, sometimes the individuals will work separately and with others. So yeah, he's a mix, isn't he? He's a kind of mix.
I suppose, like, if you're to look back historically, in democracies, like particularly if you look in the US, going back even 100 years or 200 years, you had a lot of people maybe like Gerry Hutch who were elected in cities like New York, people with, you know, a sort of mixed background in community and maybe other areas of life, let's put it that way. And it was quite a normal part of political life in America. And they always talk about actually the Irish over there, and even the Kennedy family. I mean, the Kennedy family's father, who was a politician, JFK's father, and had all these associations that are with, you know, sort of bootlegging and things like that. I'm not going to go into it specifically. So that was a normal part of political life, but maybe it stopped being so at one point. So Gerry, and of course we have Sinn Féin, who are going to be one of the biggest parties, who have all sorts of associations, not too distantly in the past. So Gerry Hutch fits into that, but is it enough? You know, so that might be okay there, but to get elected, he's going to have to appeal to more than the people in the North Inner City that might have sent kids to Corinthians Boxing Club, isn't he?
He is. He's going to have to talk about, I suppose, his thoughts on immigration. Yeah. His thoughts on housing.
Yeah. And his thoughts on crime.
And economics. Yeah. And various things like that. And his thoughts on crime, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, because crime is becoming a big issue in this election.
Law and order.
Well, it is. You see, this is the. Yeah. So this is the kind of irony, like, you know, their crime has become a big issue in this campaign, so he's going to have to address that in a sense.
Well, I've no doubt, to be honest with you, that he will be perfectly capable when he sits down, whatever forum, you know, he takes. Obviously, he's welcome here. Yeah, more than welcome to sit here and we can discuss with him. Yeah, I'm sure plenty of other platforms would also like to speak to Gerry Hutch or like him in a studio. I've no doubt everybody would like to speak to him, and he will do what he wishes to do. Yeah. But I would think wherever he does that, wherever he has that conversation, he will have certainly got structured policies. Yeah. Because I don't think he just does things on a whim. No. I think he's the sort of person that definitely thinks long and hard. Yeah. Sees the pitfalls. Yeah. And I think he will have a campaign which is going to be largely online. I think he is supposed to be doing some door-to-door stuff. I wanted to ask him that today, and it's just not so easy when people are shooting questions and everybody wants to ask them the question. So it isn't an ideal forum, a media mob, to discuss anything.
Yeah, because if like obviously I drove in today from through his constituency, and there's already 3 to 4 posters on each of the lampposts as you come in.
Right.
So
none of him.
Well, none of him.
No.
So, I mean, that's the traditional way. You see Claire Daly, Gary Gannon, and, Pascal Donoghue, I drove past in 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Like, is he going to do that traditional campaign stuff, which is posters?
Honestly, don't know.
Drops?
I don't know. I mean, all he has said in the statement he gave us at the weekend, confirming that he was running, was it was going to be largely a sort of a social media campaign.
Yeah.
Poster and video.
Yeah.
Social media. So that presumably is part of it, but he will, I imagine, do some, like, Gerry Hutch isn't a man who's afraid.
No.
Certainly not. I think he is, like, whatever you think of him, whatever people think of him, I think he is a courageous person. He's not afraid of things, and I think he will walk the streets of his constituency, and I think he will do a bit of that.
Yeah.
It's probably not viable or feasible for him to do it in the same way other normal politicians do on a day-to-day basis, but I do think he will do that. I don't think he's going to be shying away from...
No. I mean...
did you listen, by the way, to the interview with Barry Keoghan on...
I listened to some of it, I
Louis Theroux.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. I found it quite fascinating, but it was interesting. I don't know whether you got the little bit he talked about. He was reluctant really to talk about his childhood because he doesn't want to sound like a whinger.
No.
He did talk about it, and his mother was a heroin addict and died of addiction.
Yeah.
The mother had put him and his brother into care from the age of about 5.
Yeah.
And he thinks he was in care between the ages of 5 and 7. The granny didn't know they were in care because she seemed to have been able to take them at the weekends or something.
Yeah.
But as soon as sort of the granny found out that they were in care, she took them.
Yeah.
And there becomes a stability.
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't say whether the granny was still alive or dead, but she obviously was a very stable figure. He went to school and he showed prominence in acting, and he said, like, you couldn't say in Summerhill in the North Inner City you wanted to be an actor back then.
No.
Because people would laugh at you. And he said all of a sudden people started realising he was actually quite good at it.
Yeah.
And then they started going, you're going to make it.
Yeah.
And he describes a scene where he's standing outside a window of a pub, himself and some other kids, and they're looking in, the X Factor's on. And the other kids, instead of slagging him, are saying, you're going to be on that.
Yeah.
And then he talks about Kelly Harrington and how she sort of came through that. Because he said, kids from my part of town don't go anywhere. They don't get out.
No.
And he said that himself and Kelly Harrington had spoken and that they had discussed how it would be lovely if they could put some of their efforts and their time into a kind of an after-school club arena where they could, help kids who were interested in their skill sets, and others could as well. And they'd have food for them, and they'd have encouragement and hope for the future and stuff.
Some of that's about expectation, you see.
Of course it is.
Yeah, so, people often, one of the values of having a middle class upbringing is you expect things could come your way, and, there's a lack of that if people that grow up in those really difficult circumstances, that people don't believe that they can. Yeah,
they don't believe in themselves, and but they don't have that.
They don't have that experience.
Capital.
No, they don't.
That we speak about.
Exactly. They don't see people around them. They don't, coming together.
It always really annoys me, those school table things.
Yeah.
Those things.
Yeah.
I can't explain to you how much they annoy me because you're like. I mean, it is just such an unfair playing field. Obviously, the kids that are going to those bloody private schools that always make it to the top of these tables are kids who, as children, were given doctor's sets to play with.
Yeah.
And dental sets and this, that and the other. And it was instilled in them from... They start talking, what are you going to be when you grow up?
Yeah, you should.
And it's a completely different narrative than somebody growing up in a place where there's unemployment, maybe there's addiction, there's long-term parenting problems.
Yeah, and of course the other thing is that when some people make mistakes in the teenage years, when I made mistakes in my teenage years, I had my parents there to help me out, to to know what to do, and that's the experience of people with that background. If you don't have that safety net, it's a whole different matter, because you can really fall through the cracks, and we see it all the time in this society.
And so, look, I've brought up the Barry Keoghan interview just because I listened to it fresh there. The other day I was out for a walk. People who haven't got on and got out of those areas through crime, mightn't really think that Gerry Hutch's career reflects how children should be encouraged within the place. Well, you see, there's
going to so this is the contradiction, right? On some ways, Gerry Hutch is a success story, and in another way, other people are going to say, he thrived in a dysfunctional world, and instead of fighting against that dysfunction, he just rose to the top of it. So that's the question that is going to be at the heart of his campaign. Now, whether people from the North Inner City feel that, they probably don't. It's, he's going to have to...
Certain people, I'm sure, do. I mean, look, in the end of the day, Gerry Hutch did what he did. What he admits doing.
Yeah, and he doesn't admit to too much. But obviously,
doesn't admit to too much. But the state, or certainly the Garda Síochána, believe he did certain things that made him become a wealthy individual.
In particular, like a couple of
robberies,
bank robberies that were record bank robberies at the time.
Yeah, they believe the Gardaí believe they set him on a path to riches through other criminality. They believe, but whatever, if you can cast that aside, he did change everything for the next generation within one generation.
Yeah,
and that's taking what you're not given.
Yeah.
I have sort of, a lot of thoughts on all this. I don't fall into any place in what I agree or don't agree with. I sort of understand it in a way why you might take that route, because within one generation you change everything. You change absolutely everything. Now, other people will work really, really hard.
Yeah, so I mean, if you talk about the people that might be community workers in the North Inner City that are grown up there, they will be paid a pittance probably, they will work endless hours, struggle really hard to get people to conform to the system, go to school, work hard. That will be all their energies will be towards trying to direct people that are struggling towards that route, and they may say that's the right way to do it. If you know what I mean.
Well, they would say the right way to do it is to work hard and to do it honestly.
Yeah.
And they will. A lot of people, I suppose, will look at that as a cheater's way of doing it or whatever.
Yeah.
But there's no denying that you change something for a generation, and that you probably.
Yeah, and there's no denying that the system is stacked against some people.
Totally.
We're seeing it's a funny thing because. What's the link between Gerry Hutch and Donald Trump getting elected, right? Now, I'm not going to connect them as people, but what you do see is that people in societies across the Western world have developed this real distrust for elites and for people that are, controlling
unless
society.
Elon Musk.
Well, but they have it. Donald Trump is elected because he's able to tap into that distrust and saying the system is stacked against ordinary people, and that's the connection with Gerry Hutch, is that instead of people laughing his candidacy out of the park, instead he's getting 8% in the polls because there is this huge distrust against the elites in society and the people that control it, and people are willing to overlook all sorts of things, not just in Donald Trump, but in electing politicians, even like Boris Johnson or many others, because there is that breakdown that didn't exist maybe 30 years ago. People thought, professors know best, and scientists are to be trusted. People don't think like that anymore, and therefore they're more willing to consider Gerry Hutch.
And I suppose understanding and connecting with the people who are actually living on the ground in the way the Democrats in the US just didn't get it at all.
No, they didn't read the room. They were preaching to people about things that they were preachy. I mean, that's I would have voted them.
And had such a huge belief in themselves and that this was the way things were going to stay. And then, anyway, that's the US. Okay,
are we gone off traffic?
We're gone off on a mad kind of thing there. Going back to Gerry Hutch. Gerry Hutch will have his policies. I believe he will have a proper, structured, organised thought process on what he sees as, a way forward, his policies on immigration. He said he's the people's choice.
Yeah.
Sort of the man of the people. He was chosen, he believes, to run for election. He didn't decide to do it. People came to him and asked him to do it.
Yeah.
And that's why he's doing it.
Yeah.
Because the people have asked him.
Yeah.
And he's going to go for it. So he will be sort of going with policies that he believes represent people on the ground that I can tell you and I don't understand.
No, we don't. Like. No, we don't. I mean, we can have an understanding, but we're not, that is not our world.
It's not our world. And there is a huge amount of issues and problems ongoing generationally in areas like the North Inner City that aren't probably happening in Phibsborough.
No.
And Cabra and other areas like that. But in the North Inner City, there is generational issues around homelessness, around addiction, around lack of equality and opportunity and all of that. And I definitely believe that despite the fact that he reared his own family in Clontarf, moved out of the area, I do think he retained a deep connection with that community of the North Inner City. And I also think, and I'd love to have a chance to ask him this at some point, who knows, maybe I will, maybe I won't, but I'd love to ask him, is this about retaking his city? What happened after 2016 and that whole Kinahan-Hutch feud and all that, savagery and murder and everything seeped down into the community spirit and sort of destroyed it in a way. It turned neighbour against neighbour. It pitted, people who should have been looking out for one another against one another. And there was, drug money thrown at those who grabbed it to give a piece of information and stuff like that. And that wasn't the community, poor as it was, that Hutch and others grew up in. I think the North Inner City always prided itself on having this incredibly close community where neighbour helped neighbour and you'd share whatever you had left in the fridge with somebody else. Yep. Is it a kind of a way psychologically that he's coming back? It's his town, it's his city.
Well, but there'll be other people who say he will have a Machiavellian agenda. There'll be something else other reasons that are doing it. I mean, that's one perspective.
What if he ends up in the Dail? He'll say, I'll go out to Dubai and deal with
I don't know. Or, I'm just throwing it out there that there will be other people that the guard, for example, the Gardaí that have policed the city will look and say, he may have another agenda and, that he's not...
he won't be popular with the guards. He won't be popular with other politicians. He probably won't be popular with the middle classes.
No.
And with many, many people, including the political media themselves, I'm sure... a lot of people looking down their nose on him.
Oh, look, there's already...
But there will be a lot of people that support him and will vote for him.
Look, I think it's very interesting because it even beyond Gerry Hutch's, incredible roller coaster of a life, it's interesting to see how people perceive these things. We're definitely, the fact that he's even, being considered as a viable candidate, I think shows how Ireland is changing and there is that gap in society between the haves and the have-nots. And there's a whole section of people that are thinking very differently in society. So I think it's interesting in that route. So look, I think the other thing is if he does put up loads of posters, they're going to be whipped off and stuck on student walls across the country. So he's going to have
collector's items, I'd say, as well. The airport today, you see, of course, we stand out, the media, especially in the airport. There's cameras, there's, microphone booms, there's people hanging around, notebooks, you're on your phone, gangs. We all tend to stand together in a pack, as they call the media. But everybody coming off the flights and going around just kept saying, who's coming? Is there somebody coming? And we'd be like, don't know, maybe.
Yeah.
But when he did come out, obviously, there was the scrum around him. But if you look at the footage that's used, everybody around is also videoing.
Right, okay.
This sort of almost semi-celebrity that has come out.
Oh, no, I think a celebrity, yeah.
And everybody knows who he is.
Well, I nearly always finish podcasts by saying, we'll probably come back to this, but I think with Gerry Hutch's election campaign, because that's the only ending I can ever think of.
I know.
I think I can definitely say we will definitely come back.
Definitely come back. It's been such a busy few weeks. We were always discussing that, but my goodness, between the trial that's going on in the High Court of Conor McGregor, and the accusations there and his denials, this ongoing story about Gerry Hutch and the election, and all the rest of the stuff that we have.
I remember when Crime World was launched, somebody saying, would you have enough to do an episode a week? And I think we've never run out of things.
We could have an entire TV station running 24/7 with stuff. It's never ending. There's never enough people. We'll have to start campaigning for more resources, will we? Anyway, look, we'll leave that for the moment and we will definitely come back to it.
Thanks, Nicola.